Reading the papers is not the hard part of a literature review. Deciding what they mean for your gap is, and that's the only part you should be spending your judgment on. Hi, if you're new here, I'm Dr. Lydia Park, Dartmouth PhD in biomedical engineering, NSF grant awardee, and current UVA postdoc. And today I want to show you how I run a literature review in minutes instead of weeks, why the papers were never your real bottleneck, and how to find the one research gap that only your expertise can fill. Welcome to Kingdom-Minded PhD Scientists. Here's the mental model that should change how you approach literature review. Every research task splits into two kinds of work. There is execution, which is the searching, the pulling, the extracting, the tagging, and the organizing. And then there's the judgment, which is deciding what the field is actually saying, where it disagrees with itself, and where the understudied niche is that lines up with your specific expertise and strengths. Execution is where most PhD students spend 80% of their time, and it's the part that doesn't need you. It needs to be done really well, but it doesn't need your years of training to be done. Judgment is the part that only you can do, and it's the part that gets crowded out because you are so tired from the execution. So the whole point of this system is simple. You take execution off your plate and you protect your brain space and your energy for the judgment. You are not outsourcing your thinking. You are clearing the runway for it. And there's one more thing that makes this worth setting up. When you do it this way, you're not producing a one-time document that disappears into a folder you'll never open up again. You are compiling an asset. Every review you run stacks into something searchable that you can come back to when you write the proposal, when you write your manuscript, and when you defend. It compounds over time. And a quick note on the ingredients before I walk you through it live so you are not lost. The engine I'm going to use is Claude Code, and the thing that makes Claude Code so good for this job is that it can run several agents in parallel. So instead of doing your review one theme at a time, it works on all of your themes at once. I also connect a few MCPs, which are just the connections that let Claude Code reach into other tools. I have Notion connected so it can build the final readable page for me. And I have Consensus and PubMed MCPs connected, which are academic search tools. So the search is pulling from peer-reviewed literature and not just whatever floats to the top of a general web search. One thing in Consensus though, I am on the free plan, but once it's connected to Claude Code, the free connection has been more than enough for me, so don't let the paywall stop you from trying this. So let me walk you through it live. Step 1, and please don't skip this one because it's a step everyone wants to rush past. Before I ask Claude Code to do anything, I set up my folders intentionally, and I name everything so that it's obvious. The reason is that Claude Code reads your structure to know where things belong. If your naming is intuitive, it knows exactly where to put the new files it creates, and you stay organized instead of ending up with a pile of loose files you can't find later. So for this example, my top folder is named for the actual project, computational modeling of choriocapillaris endothelium. And underneath it, I have 3 subfolders, one for the project goal, one for the literature review, and one for the data. Step 2 is where you now ground the whole system. Before I ask for any single paper, I tell Claude Code what my project actually is, and I have it write that into a markdown file inside the project goal folder. So here I explain my purpose, and here Claude Code will take that into a markdown file, and it summarizes that here. And this matters more than it looks. Once that project summary exists, every part of the review afterward is aware of what you're actually trying to do. So when it evaluates a paper, it's not just describing the paper in a vacuum. It can tell you how that paper relates to your specific research and or it differs from what has already been published. You are giving it the context so it can give you relevance instead of a generic summary. Now, step 3 is the heart of it. This is the targeted prompt, and the word targeted is doing a lot of work. So here, I am saying, I'm not saying review the literature on this topic, I'm telling it exactly which lanes to search and exactly how I want the results organized. For this project, I asked for the literature across 3 lanes at once. Lane 1 is the prior work on the computational simulations to model transport and flow in the choriocapillaris, specifically the protective flow state and the inflammatory injury states using Navier-Stokes-based or COMSOL-based simulation programs. And the lane 2 is the wet lab studies. And for those, I asked whether and how they paired their experiments with computational simulation. And lane 3 is the agent-based modeling applications. And I have it run a web search for that one specifically. And then the tag that makes this genuinely useful for my work is that I ask it to flag every paper by whether it used OCTA clinical data in the modeling, because those are the papers where the output is clinician facing and actually usable downstream. And that one tag will save me hours of sorting later. Now, the last piece of the prompt here is the schema. I tell it the exact columns I want. So every paper comes back described the same way, and I can compare them side by side. Here is the schema I use. And notice a few of those columns are doing pretty important work. Code availability and dataset will tell me like whether I can actually build on that paper. The relevance to my research and context for citation are the ones that connected back to my project. So I can see the differentiating factor between this paper and what came before it. That is the raw material for positioning my own contribution later. I also ask it to pull out around 5 landmark findings across the whole set and to score the field's agreement on each one. Strong consensus, moderate consensus, or conflicting evidence. That single step turns a stack of papers into a map of where the field is settled and where it's still fighting, and the places it's still fighting are often exactly where your gap is hiding. Also, I like kind of compiled it into a specific skill set for my list search, and so that's another way how I make this reproducible and repeatable every single time. Now let's watch what it does, because that's the part that saves real time. When I send that prompt, so here, do you see how Claude Code launches an agent for each lane and runs them in parallel? So one agent is working on the computational lane, one is on the wet lane, and one is on the agent-based modeling lane, all at the same time. Now, a few minutes later, everything will come back together. And one detail that matters for your token budget is that for this literature review, I use Sonnet pretty much, not Opus, because, for this kind of structured search and extraction, and with the specific skills I built into it, Sonnet does the job clearly, or not clearly, like cleanly, and it's far more efficient on tokens, so I save on cost while I save on time as well. I stay conscious of that because, these runs add up. And here's what lands. So here you will see that they compiled everything into a lit review, Excel sheet, and a summary. So if you come here, this is what you will get. So you see how now in the first column, you have the 3 categories, the 3 lanes, and then you have all the paper titles, the authors, the journals, the DOIs, right, which is your safeguard, because you really want your every paper linked back to a real verifiable source, so you're never just trusting a title that a model might have made up. And you can just click straight through and confirm it's a real paper. And that, this verification step is not optional in research, I think. It's built into how I set this up. Alongside the spreadsheet, it writes a markdown summary here with the landmark findings and the consensus scoring. So I have the bird's eye view in plain language as well. Now, a spreadsheet is powerful, but it's not how I want to read. And compound them into a readable asset over time. So the last step is where, the Notion connection is really useful. I asked Claude Code here to compile everything, as you can see here, into my Notion account.
organized by theme with the landmark findings up top and each paper's differentiating factor called out. And because Notion is connected through the MCP, it builds it directly into my account. When it finishes, I can open the page and have a clean summary at the top, the 5 landmark findings laid out, and then each theme with its paper underneath. So let me show you how that looks like. So here you will see, yeah, I asked it to fix a little things before, but so you'll see like you can just click open and okay, so it's opening up. It does take a little bit of time to like, oh, it's actually quick this time. It kind of like took a few minutes to load it up. But as you can see here, there's a quick summary and the 5 landmark findings, and then all the papers, summarized with the 3 major themes. So you can see here, the last one is the agent-based modeling, and then the clinical trial included data. And so this is the asset I was talking about at the start. It's readable, this is searchable, and it's something I can come back to and just compile it, into my Notion account. And by the way, I also use a free Notion at this moment. Um, and so this is something that I can come back to and not something that I just file away and forget.
So let's step back and notice what just happened, because that's the part I care about most. Everything up to here was execution, and it barely touched anything. The searching, the extracting, the tagging, the sorting, the formatting, all of it was handled by Claude, which means the energy I would have burned on those weeks of grunt work is now still in my tank, and now I get to spend it on the only thing that actually needs me. I read the synthesis and I look for the place where the consensus is thin, or the evidence is still conflicting, or nobody has connected 2 lanes that clearly belong together. And I ask the real question: where in this map does my scientific background give me an advantage, an edge that almost no one else has? That is the research gap, not the one you find by reading hundreds of abstracts until you're numb, but the one you find when your brain is still fresh and the whole field is just laid out in front of you. You don't do all the work yourself. You build the system, you keep the human judgment, checkpoints, and you spend yourself on the high leverage decisions that only you can make. You could try to rebuild this from the video, but the reason mine runs the same way every time is the piece the recording can't really show you, which is the repository of skills and agents underneath it, plus the exact folder structure and prompt templates. I put all of this into a small course that will open up soon, and the waitlist will get first access. Click the link in the description down below to sign up for the waitlist. So here's all for now. See you in the next one. Stay strategic and stay rooted.